Well, hi, everybody. It's time to talk some college basketball here on Friday, November 10th. We're going to talk about yesterday, the 9th, and I've already prepared the version for the 10th. And I also identified there's tournament games. There's a Veterans Day here, Veterans Day Classic tournaments. And I added site locations so that we can take a look at the games that are not true home games where they're being played at a neutral site location. So we'll discuss how that's done. And we're getting real close to being able to use current season stats. We still can't yet. We still won't work. If you try to choose the current year version of stats, you can see that when you refresh, it's going to break and there's nothing here. And the only reason why we can't do it yet is there's a few teams that have not played any games. And every team on the list has to play a game, at least one. Otherwise, the formulas break because you can't divide by zero. And we're actually comparing all of these teams to each other. And so if there's a team that just doesn't have any games played, it won't allow it to work. And there are a few teams on that list. The way to see those when you're digging through the standing sheet is if you go here and you choose current year, okay? And then go to the standing sheet, you can see wherever there are errors popping up here, Gonzaga hasn't played a game yet. UNC Greensboro, I believe, hasn't played a game yet. Hawaii hasn't played a game yet. They're on Hawaii time. Wright State. These guys, they're just a few of them that I believe. Florida State, I believe all of them are playing today. St. Francis, New York may need to be updated, and Long Island. I believe everyone's getting at least one, conference game or something in there today. So we'll probably be able to do it for what's going to most likely be a big college basketball day tomorrow on Saturday. And I'll have to get that out to you guys early because I'm going to be on the road all day Saturday. I'll be gone all day Saturday and Sunday. I'll try to get this done for everyone because I know those that have purchased it are going to want copies and everything. By the way, if you want to purchase a copy of this to get access to this information, it's very helpful. Let's talk about, for example, what happened on Thursday and explain why this still works pretty well, even using last season's stats for the most part. So what we're seeing here is we're seeing on Thursday a record of 21-8, but that's with no home bump at all. And I've talked about adding a 5% home bump, and I sent it out with a 5% home bump yesterday. But I want to show you why I do that. So if you see here, there's some away teams at the bottom at no home bump. There was American and there was Stephen F. Austin. Both these teams had worse strength of schedules, and both of them were away, and their margins were really low, 2.5% or 0.5%. So the home teams do win more, and I've said that it's between about a 0 and 20% bump, but 5% is a good amount just to throw on there because it really helps because it moves those games to the correct side. It shows you that William and Mary should have won this game, and they did. It also shows you that Middle Tennessee should have won this game, and they did. So that gets you to 23-6, which is what I sent the algorithm out at, and this is kind of what we went with for the day on Thursday. So how could you have played this? Did you make money? How could you have made money? What was surprising on here? What wasn't surprising? Let's go into it. Well, first of all, generally pretty good. I always like to look at a few different things. First, I like to look at the home teams because we're trying to win 90% of these home teams. We end up going 19-4, winning 83% of them. Well, what did we lose? We lost Cal Santa Barbara, and that was not expected. If there's anything that was a rough game on Thursday, it was this game. It was a value pick. We had the line at minus 372, and the actual line was a little bit better than that at minus 350. At minus 350, and they're favored by 7.5 points. They lose. So they lose, and they lose by 6, it looks like. So bummer. Sometimes you lose some. That's one that we lost. Idaho was the home underdog. It was actually the only home underdog of the day. They lost an extremely close game, but they did cover the spread of plus 4.5 points. So whenever you see underdogs on this list, you're going to have them on a parlay or a round robin, you're going to want to take them plus the points because it gives you a much better chance of winning them. And even though Idaho, there was a 1-point game with 2 seconds left, they end up losing by 3, but they do cover that 4.5. And that is important because it is showing a very close game that could have been won by Idaho, but at least they cover because you get those points here. So that's not a total loss, even though they did lose the game that they did cover. Sam Houston loses to Utah Valley. You can see there were a little bit of injuries here. We didn't have them as a value pick because their line was worse than what the implied line was. Don't know why they lost. Margin was at 10% with a 5% home bump. That's just one of the games we lost. I think that's one that there's really no reason. It's a closer game that they lost. I'm not too worried about it, but that's a loss. Then down here, Kent State loses to James Madison. And for those of you that received the email from me yesterday, I mentioned how James Madison knocked off Michigan State in game 1 earlier this season. We're not using current season stats yet, so we just have last season in here. The fact that James Madison beat Michigan State this early on in the year was a cue that they are a good team this year and to stay away from Kent State. That's something that will fix itself up as we start using current season stats in here. So I said in my email, stay away from Kent State. You don't want to touch anybody against James Madison right now. And sure enough, James Madison, of course, wins this game. How convincingly? You went to double overtime, I believe, and they win by 5 in double overtime. So there's nothing wrong with this game because we can tell James Madison is different this year, and they're pretty good. So not bad, really not bad. You can see with Idaho covering and James Madison being kind of predictable, it's really just the 2 losses of Cal Santa Barbara and Sam Houston. And that's not bad. Away teams go 4-2, better with the away teams. 2 underdogs winning, Tarleton State and North Florida. You lose Army and East Tennessee State, but 4-2, like not bad at all. So overall on the day, there were ways to win money. With this. It wasn't perfect, but it was okay. Now, for those of you that are looking at games against the spread and, how do you play these games? I was thinking, well, when you want to sort this list here and you want to sort, when you want to sort this different list, let's go here. Let's sort. Usually we do descending by margin because you're going to get your wins at the top, right? You end up, if you're betting the money line, this is the way you want to look at the games, is you want to look at them top down by margin and, generally stick with home teams, and you're going to win a lot of these games. But what about when you're trying to go up against the spread? What do? Well, I have a couple different filters in here. I've got something called spread cover, which is trying to tell you if it's a positive number that a team is supposed to cover the spread and by how many. We can sort the list by spread cover, descending by spread cover plus it's called, which is spread cover plus is this one. So how did we do on those? Well, there's a couple of things about looking at this that make me want to add another filter and explain when you sort by spread cover plus some other things that you want to look for. Well, you do win the top 3, which are all those 3 underdogs. All the underdogs cover the spread. Then you have a couple away teams that don't cover, and then you have some home teams, and it gets kind of choppy here. But as you can see, there's 12 games, and you go 8-4 with these spread cover plus numbers. The spread cover plus numbers that were positive end up going 3-2. Okay, so these are positive numbers over here. But also when the spread cover plus is still a little bit negative, but the team spread is not that bad and they're home, those were winning too. So, it's just one thing to look at, but I would say that whenever you're seeing underdogs on this list, the chances of them covering the spread according to the algorithm are pretty good. So, when you click underdog, you can see we won on the spread with all of our underdogs, even though 2 of them were away. So those are just some additional ways that you can sort and look through this to try to, find the best spread picks to play. But I'm more about the money line. I mean, this algorithm is trying to predict winners. And so as you can see, it's home teams and winners are really what I like to go with. And so this is what happens with your home teams, 19-4, with the exception of staying away from Kent State, because we know that James Madison is a little different this year. Did that end up being profitable? If you stayed away from Kent State, it did. But as you can see, there's not a ton of profit to be had here because the lines are so terrible. So you really have to throw a lot of things together on a parlay or a round robin and hit most of them in order to be profitable like that. And you got to take something like Idaho plus the points. All right, so that's the review of Thursday. Now, what about Friday? You are going to get a look at Friday, even for those that didn't pay today. It's an enormous list on here. So let's talk about what's happening here. Let's talk about the site that we have here. So what we've got, all of our games, we have 70 games, it looks like, today in here. Now, we don't have any home underdogs, first of all. That's the first thing I check for. The answer is, oh, wait a minute, we do. Alabama Birmingham is plus 250 against Clemson. How about that? Okay, so there is one home underdog at a 5% home bump. Sorry, let's go back to a 0% home bump. Sorry, refresh for a second. We're going to go back down to a 0 home bump. That puts this margin at 6.5%, but they are a home underdog. So somehow UAB could beat Clemson, apparently. I don't know. That's what it says. Now, so we take a look at everything. We have this site slicer now. There are games that are at neutral site locations for the most part. They're in Asheville, they're in Charlotte, they're in Lexington, they're in Philadelphia, they're in Annapolis. Now, I believe Navy is in Annapolis, so they're actually a true home game, even though it's a tournament game. And also, Charlotte is playing in one of these games, so they're actually home in Charlotte. And Lexington, I believe Kentucky is playing in Lexington, so they're actually home. So it's one of those where when you look at this, you see, all right, Kentucky's actually home. It shows them as home. Charlotte is actually home, even though it shows them as away. So this is one of those where the site filter will help. The way I got that stuff in there is I went through each game and I put the actual location in this column called site in the cube. And that's how I did it. So I wanted to show you that that's one way of seeing, your true home games and your non-true home games. Your true home games are all these ones that are the blank that have no site location. So these are actually all of your true home games. Now, knowing that we now have an idea by looking at the slicer about where the actual locations are, we're going to look at this list and we're not putting a home bump on here. We're just going to scroll through it and we're going to check out and say, all right, well, what's a good pick today, right? And why? First thing we're going to do is we're going to look at all of our underdogs, right? Because yesterday, all of our underdogs covered the spread. All of our underdogs plus their points, they all covered the spread. Now, I can already tell you today that is definitely not going to happen for a few different reasons. One, strength of schedules on some of these teams are atrocious. You can see that Chattanooga, Kennesaw State, these are big, huge minus numbers, and that's why they have a bunch of points. And even though the margin's pretty good here, this is very, very tough reliably to know whether or not these away teams are going to cover because of this here. Now, Texas Rio Grande Valley plus 2 points has a 17% margin. And although they're on the road, they do have a better strength of schedule than South Dakota. So this one's probably okay. Pacific, worst strength of schedule against California. But they do have a pretty good margin. And you do get 9.5 points. San Diego State, BYU, plus 2.5 points. 17% margin. Their strength of schedule is better. So looking at these ones have a better chance of covering. Wake Forest is a little bit injured in Georgia. That's not that great of a strength of schedule. There's this Alabama Birmingham game, which is actually at home, plus 7.5 points. That's what I'd recommend doing here is the plus 7.5 on Alabama Birmingham. This is a really bad strength of schedule for Eastern Washington, even though you get 13 points. So really want to stay away from these ones in red because they've just played weaker teams last year, and it's sketchy is what it is. And these are really close down here. Memphis is a bit injured apparently against Missouri, so that's something to watch out for. Southern Miss gets 7.5 points against Akron, and even though this would switch after a 5% home bump, it's a possible one. So I would say the ones to take on the spread plus the points here look like Texas Rio Grande Valley, San Diego State. You get 5.5 points with Arizona against Duke, and that's okay. I know you don't want to go into Duke, Chapel Hill, whatever, but that says with plus 5.5 points is okay. Birmingham plus 7.5. Pennsylvania against St. Joseph's is plus 6.5. These are all possible, guys. All possible. So yeah, so it looks like about those 5 plus the points, and you're probably going to go 3 and 2 or better on those. All right, so those are your underdogs. You can see a lot of away teams. Well, what about, are there any reasonable lines on any home teams up here that have big margins, right? Where are our value picks? These things right here, right? Well, you could sort by value pick, and we could see them pop up to the top to see where we see the lines are better. I mean, I could do that. How many of them are there? Yeah, there's a lot of them. It's not really going to be all beneficial to do that. We're just going to scroll down the list instead. There are a lot of value picks, but a lot of them are going to be away teams. So as we go down the list here, what looks good? Well, unfortunately, Air Force is away here, but that is only minus 450. If you're thinking about a big parlay or a big round robin with a bunch of teams, Air Force probably goes on there, even though they're away. Iona against Sacred Heart is only minus 550, only minus 550. I know I'm saying only, but you know, that comparatively, you can see it's a value pick at least. It's better than the implied line. These minus 2000s and 5000, there's just no return on them. I just skip over them. You don't worry about taking the minus a ton of points because you never know if a team's going to win by 20 points or not. Here we've got Cal Baptist minus 375 against Jackson State. Did Jackson State pull an upset earlier this season already? I can't remember. Quinnipiac over Central Connecticut State is only minus 205. That's kind of the first close to a reasonable line that we've seen on here with a margin of 30%. So that probably goes on there. Virginia Tech is away, but I think that might be a neutral site game. Hold on a second. The neutral site games, yeah, it is a neutral site game. So that's not in, it's in Charlotte. So that's what I'm saying. This is not a bad line now because you see that Virginia Tech is actually, this is a neutral site game. So South Carolina is not at home, which makes that a better pick for Virginia Tech. This is actually in Charlotte though. So Liberty's pick is not as good because they are truly away. College of Charleston against Duquesne. Interesting. Where's that game? It's not in wherever Duquesne is, I don't think. Then you've got some underdogs down here, right? Oh, this is a neutral site game. Whoops. Oh, now I'm starting to understand. So that is not in Alabama, Birmingham, everybody. It's good that we checked that out. So that makes this pick not as good. Not as good. They're actually way down on this list, and it's a neutral site game. So watch out. Same thing with this Pennsylvania St. Joseph's game. Virginia and Florida, minus, well, that's a good line for Virginia here. The strength of schedule is not as great, though. All right, let's keep opening that back up and go down the list. Chattanooga, no, that's the bad strength of schedule. George Mason, local to George Mason, where I am at home. Should I go to this game? No, I can't. I got my kid's hockey game I got to go to tonight. But the George Mason playing Austin Peay, that's not a bad line. It's a value pick line, actually. So that's okay. What else do we have? Bad strength of schedule here, so I'd stay away from that. Tennessee away at a slightly injured Wisconsin, a 20% margin. Getting close here, but that is a good line for Tennessee. Valpo at home against IUP. Valpo, value pick for Valpo, minus 198. UMass Lowell strength of schedule is bad, and they're on the road at Dartmouth, so I would not take that. Liberty, this is a neutral site game we talked about. Marshall at home against Radford, minus 148. Not bad. A lot of value in that line. 18% for Marshall. That's a pretty good pick for Marshall there. Here you got bad strength of schedule for Kennesaw State at Florida State. First game of the season for Florida State. Don't know what's going on there. So probably stay away from that. We said Texas Rio Grande Valley plus the points was good. We stayed away from Pacific because the strength of schedule was bad. We said San Diego State plus the points is reasonable, even though they're away. Butler, that's minus 4,000. Not doing anything there. College of Charleston. I mean, it's tough. Duquesne usually has a good reputation, so I don't know what to do there. Virginia Commonwealth, VCU, minus 192 at home. Good strength of schedule. That's not bad. It's a good line. Value pick line. Troy, bad strength of schedule. Probably staying away from that. Wake Forest at Georgia, too close to call. The line is good, though, but they're away. And they're just a little bit injured. And we're starting to get down to under 15% margins. So these games are supposed to be getting closer. Now, these lines, now you can see these lines are not as good as they should be. Like Furman's minus 345. We think they should only be minus 250. So these are where you're starting to lose value on these games. Northwestern against Dayton, okay, though. Look at Northwestern strength of schedule is a lot better, and it's only minus 205 when it should be minus 227. So that one would go on the list as being a good pick. That Arizona Duke game, we said take Arizona plus the points because it's 5.5 points, and Duke has a lot of extra money on them anyway. Virginia away at Florida. I think that's a neutral site game. And then we're getting way down into the weeds here. One thing that you can see is stuff like this, where like Minnesota at UTSA, Texas San Antonio. Anytime there's a ridiculously huge line here, you see how there's a big spread. Like they're saying Minnesota's got to win this game by 12 points to cover the spread. We do not think that will happen. We think that Texas San Antonio will cover their end of the bargain there and lose by less than 11. You see how this game is 67-65. So this is one where you look at taking the away team plus a bunch of points because we've got this as not nearly a lopsided matchup. This one too, Murray State and Tennessee Tech. Murray State has to win by 15. We have this being a 2-point game against Tennessee Tech. So these ones plus the points down here, they tend to win more than not when the algorithm thinks these are going to be closer games. So always look for those massive like this here, Louisiana State and Nicholls State. 22.5 points. We think this is a 3-point game. Right now, Louisiana State has a much better strength of schedule. So in that sense, I kind of understand why that number is there. And maybe that one's not as good. But this Minnesota one and this Murray State one especially, like look at this. 15 points. The strength of schedule is only 4.76 better for Murray State. Tennessee State, like we definitely think Tennessee State covers their end of the bargain here and does not lose this game by more than 15 points. So I know I said a lot of things and I talked about a lot of games, but this is the way college basketball is. There's so much to choose from that you do have a lot of flexibility, and you should be winning money on days like this, utilizing the value picks, utilizing some of those teams that it thinks are underdogs that have reasonable strength of schedules plus the points, right? Your Texas Rio Grande Valley, your San Diego State, your Arizona. We're more concerned about this game because it's a neutral site game, the Birmingham game, so we don't necessarily know. And I mean, Pennsylvania plus 6.5 St. Joseph's is okay as well. All right, so there you go. Purchase a copy of this. You want to start getting access to the next week of emails as I set this up for the current season and continue to do more work on it. It is the best algorithm that I have. It's the most predictive. It's the most profitable of all of them. And I've always said that because it's true. So if you want to copy it, it's like $100. All right. Good luck, everyone. May all your pick be winning. Is there a pick of the day? What would the pick of the day be? What would the pick of the day be? What is the pick of the day? Let's sort this by money line descending for a second. The pick of the day has to be something that has a reasonable money line. Money line descending. We know that's not a true home game, so that really is not going to be it. These are all dogs, and they're all away. Oklahoma State's injured. It's tough. It's really tough. There isn't anything screaming out to me on any of these underdogs as being really excellent picks that are definitely going to win. All of them have some kind of problem, either being away or neutral site or having bad strength of schedule. So you're starting to look at these kind of ones here. And Oklahoma's got some injuries against Mississippi Valley. Oh, that doesn't even have a line. So it's going to be something like, look at all these bad strength of schedules. The Marshall at Radford, I know it's minus 148, but that's pretty solid with an 18% margin, and they're a true home team. And the Tennessee's away, though. Man, this is a close margin. It is like, it's already tough. I'm sorry, but like the odds makers are clearly already utilizing this to its potential, and we just start to lose value. You don't see really anything. There's not a home underdog on here, and we're only 3 or 4 days into the season, and already there are no home underdogs. And when I think about previous years, we used to catch home underdogs at least like a month into the season. We'd still see some home underdogs, because the use of the algorithm wasn't as pervasive as it is now. But I've just been doing this for so long that I've kind of worked us all into having no value, and everyone's kind of using the best tools out there. So it is what it is. But we all operate on that plateau of information now, where everyone's kind of using the highest information that's available. All right. Well, good luck, everyone. We got a lot to choose from in there. May all your picks be winning, and enjoy your Friday, enjoy your weekend, enjoy your holiday weekend. There are other algorithms for sale too. NBA had a good day yesterday, went 2-0, including winning an underdog. College football went 1-1, I believe. The NFL game won. It did have the Bears, but it got the points wrong for sure. And hockey, of course, had a messy day, because that's all that hockey does, is have messy days. All right, good luck, everybody. May all your picks be winning.